welcome to the Business Pulse, a function of the Freedom Chamber, which you should be a member of. The Freedom Chamber is fighting for your businesses and your beliefs in the public square every day, and we're sure proud to be a part of it. So today, I'm Rod Martin. I'm here with my friend Dean Owen, and we're talking about the issues that matter most to you. First up, birthright citizenship at the Supreme Court. Who knew? Yes, this is actually an issue. I don't know about you, but I was always taught in school that it was just absolutely an established matter of constitutional law that anybody born in the territory of the United States is automatically a citizen. And indeed, that is how we have treated it since about the middle of the 1960s. But guess what? That's probably not true. I don't know if the Supreme Court's going to agree with me on that, but the Solicitor General of the United States absolutely did. So first of all, I want to encourage you to go to rodmartin.org, where we have a briefing on this about birthright citizenship, the legal arguments, the historical precedents, why the Trump administration is right. The short answer to why is just this. Birthright citizenship encourages birth tourism. We're seeing an extraordinary amount of this, in particular from communist China, but from lots of other countries where parents arrange to be here as a tourist or even as an illegal alien to make sure that their child is born on U.S. soil, and then they have a tie to the United States that is almost impossible to break. That is an abuse of the system, and it's not what the drafters of the 14th Amendment intended. The drafters of the 14th Amendment were very, very clear in their purpose. They wanted the freed slaves to be citizens. That's why they used the phrase in the 14th Amendment, which, if the other side's argument is true, is irrelevant and redundant. The phrase is, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Now, what does that mean? It means very simply that if you're the child of an ambassador, for instance, or if you're the child of a German serviceman training at an American base, you do not become a citizen. And that's clear as bell. That is in the law. That is on the INS website. That is not controversial. Why? Because the child inherits the citizenship of the parents, and the parents owe a legal obligation to their country of citizenship. Therefore, the child does too. The child doesn't magically become an American when it's here, under some other purpose, such as, again, being the child of an ambassador, or more to the point, and this is the Trump administration's point, as the child of a trespasser, an illegal alien. It's simply absurd to say that such a person is a citizen. That's an abuse. That is absolutely not what the framers intended. So, what's happening at the court today? Well, the president went to hear oral arguments himself, and one of the arguments he heard was exactly the one I just made. He also heard arguments about an 1898 case called Wong Kim Ark. Wong Kim Ark sued over this at the end of the 19th century, and the Supreme Court ruled in Wong's favor. But why? Well, the Solicitor General correctly made the case that Wong Kim Ark was the child born in California of two legal resident aliens, and the Supreme Court in 1898 upheld his citizenship. Now, how do we know that it's limited only to that? Well, we know because decades later, Congress felt the need to actually naturalize Indians living in the United States. Now, basically all of them were born here. So what's the deal? The deal is, under the law, Indian tribes were treated as independent sovereign nations, separate and distinct from the United States. So why would Congress feel the need to give them citizenship in the 1920s if the understanding wasn't clear that people who are not fully subject to the jurisdiction thereof are not born citizens. That's the case the Trump administration is making. That, I think, is a correct reading of the law. I think only in modern times, after we reopened the gates for immigration in the 1960s, did this get confused, not as a matter of law, but just as a matter of tradition. And tradition is not good enough. The Constitution is clear. If Congress wants to come back and say that anybody who's born here is a citizen, they have every power to do that. The Constitution gives naturalization and immigration powers to the Congress. Congress has not done that. And therefore, this issue of Trump's executive order treating the Constitution with reverence and respect is the right way. And I'm hopeful that the Supreme Court will agree. Dean, what are your thoughts?
Well, this is definitely your lane, but going back to your article from some time ago, I remember it is very, very well written, very and easy to understand. So that's what your newsletter is awesome about, is talk about what's going on in the world today in language that the average layman can understand. Because I'm not an attorney, you are. You try to take all that legalese talk and turn it into regular English that even rednecks can understand. So it's that good. So. Um, I couldn't agree more. This one kind of strikes personally in my circles of influence, as one of the couples here from Mexico are pregnant and they're here legally, but they're on TN visas. They're not permanent residents. TN is technical, but also temporary. So here we go. We're going to have to work through that. But if the court does the right thing, I will personally have to work through that with a family, and I understand that's going to cost me some money, but it would be a whole lot better for the country. The right decision from the Supreme Court may be tough for me. It would be the right thing for the country.
Well, it absolutely would. And it's a needed reform. We actually have to have citizenship that means something. And that has been deliberately blurred by the Democrats now for several decades for the purpose of padding their own numbers. The illegal alien concentrations in key blue states like California, New York, and Illinois, and of course Minnesota, famously, is just off the charts, and it has the effect of giving Democrats extra House seats and extra electoral votes that they're not entitled to. But it also creates the opportunity, as I said at the outset, for birth curism and for foreign enemies of the United States to get a citizenship tie that's basically impossible to break to the United States for agents of foreign governments who really have no business being here. That must stop. And that's what the Trump administration is trying to do. So, shifting gears a bit, we are on the brink of our first ever moonshot of the 21st century. We last went to the moon in December of 1972. I was 3 years old, and those guys in Apollo 17 actually landed on the moon. These new guys, 4 astronauts with Artemis 2, are not going to land, but they are going to go further out into space than humans have ever gone before. They are going to orbit the moon, and we're going to get some amazing pictures and pave the way for human return to the surface. Dean, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's just that absolute amazing time we live in. It's hard to fathom, but I believe in our lifetime we will see Elon Musk with people on Mars. That's entirely possible. We noticed that uh, the notice some of the direct energy weapons the military is using. They're being powered by small modular reactors on the ships that just power those weapons. So we've got a way to get power and electricity, which is what would obviously be needed. That would allow you to desalinate. We know Mars has got ice on it. Um, it's theoretically possible, and with what the speed at which SpaceX has moved, um, I think we're going to end up colonizing Mars, and we'll see it in our lifetime. So it's just an absolutely amazing time we live in. We also think about all the technology that comes out of the military, and our phones, GPS in our phones. Every one of us is using it every time we got to go somewhere we're not familiar with. That came out of the military. We've now got a space force and the technology and all the stuff they're doing there. And of course, nobody talks about that. You don't see it, but um, it looks like there has been some space weapons used in Iran. Um, so there's a lot moving. It's moving really fast. And I think you had a spot on this morning on your newsletter or your email about the technology that's moving forward, how fast things are happening. You talked about and did a great job of explaining how Democrats have used illegal immigration to pick up extra seats, use fake census to pick up extra seats. And I've said all along, I don't think we're a country that's 50-50 divided. I think it's more like 80-20. But because of shenanigans at elections, because of shenanigans with polling places, because of redistricting and gerrymandering and all kinds of stuff like that, they've kept the government at 50-50. I think once we get these election reforms cleaned up, like the president's talking about, and he just signed the executive order on, which of course is going to go to court, but I think that one would be upheld. We may see a giant change in this country come this November.
Well, I think you're exactly right. And look, we are headed into an economic boom. The war may be distorting that a little bit just at the moment, but that's not going to be much longer. And we've got 18 trillion in new investment coming into the country from overseas. 18 trillion in perspective, the entire gross domestic product of the United States is 30 trillion. I mean, this is like 2/3 the size of the entire American economy being invested by foreigners in America, which is definitely a nice turnaround from what we've been doing for our European friends for a very long time, clearly for very little return. So, there's this incredible opportunity. We're seeing tremendous tax refunds, no taxes on tips, no taxes on Social Security, no taxes on overtime. This really helps working people, but those investments create plants where working people are going to have the opportunity to have excellent paying jobs like their parents and grandparents did. Manufacturing is coming back to America, and I think that translates well in November. And I want to circle back to you on the tax part in particular in just a second, but let me add a couple other thoughts. The Supreme Court is also looking at racial gerrymandering, which the country has been saddled with now for decades. It's just blatantly awful on its face, but at least you can understand what they were trying to achieve in the 60s. They didn't think white people would ever vote for any black people, and they wanted black people to be represented in Congress. So they created this system of racial gerrymandered districts where you almost inevitably end up with a black congressman. Well, here's the catch, guys. Things have changed a little since 1964. It turns out there are more than 60 black U.S. House members. There are only 21 racially gerrymandered districts. So twice as many black people are being elected by normal congressional districts as are from the gerrymandered ones. So I think the Supreme Court's going to knock this down, and that takes 20 to 21 U.S. House seats out of the automatic Democrat column and makes them competitive. And we've got some other things. The president had an executive order this morning on mail-in ballots. We've got a bunch of reforms in a lot of key states. I think we've got a real shot at a much better election in November than people are thinking. But Dean, tell us about those tax refunds.
Well, latest that I've gotten from the IRS is they're averaging about 11% higher than usual. Um, where my demographic base tends to be more affluent. So I'm seeing where the one big beautiful bill is doing wonderful things for working Americans, but they phase out once your income starts to climb. Reviewed one this morning for a lady. She had about $100,000 income, and her $6,000 standard deduction addition has been turned back down. It was about 5,300. So I'm starting to see a whole lot of that where the upper crust and the upper income families are not the big beneficiaries of the bill. It's the middle income and lower income workers, and that's who this bill is helping. And it's helping those folks where we talk about a K economy, where the wealthy keep getting better and going up, and the poor struggling. That's who this bill helps. If you're trying to get a down payment on a house, find a place to rent, you're probably one of the people getting the biggest benefit from the one big beautiful bill. I'm also told by very, very competent authority there will be a one big beautiful bill 2.0, which will get rid of the rest of the Social Security taxes and do a whole lot of extremely positive things for the country. That is coming. It's just kind of right now they're kind of busy, and I think the president's plan here is to wrap up this war in the next 2 to 3 weeks. That's what he said he's going to do. Maybe it takes 3 or 4, but that gets us, that means we're wrapping up by May. And that gives us plenty of time to get the oil prices back down. Lets him come off the war ramp and go onto the legislative ramp and start doing a lot of things. We'll see that investment come in. Just we'll see the economy come back around. True inflation number this morning was 1.7%. So we have added about 1% inflation. That's oil. Oil prices ping pong around, causing inflation. When they ping back down, the inflation will fall quickly in the summer when the people are starting to think about midterms and everyone's out campaigning. So
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would add, the whole point of the one big beautiful bill, which was wonderful for businesses, wonderful for business owners in lots of key ways that incentivize investment into the US economy. Well, what does that do? It creates jobs. And if you create a bunch of good paying jobs for regular working Americans, you solve most of our social ills. I mean, we are on track. And we saw this in Trump's first term. We hit a point where there were about 500,000 more jobs being offered in this country than there were workers to take them. That's never happened. That's unprecedented in American history. And we are on track for that kind of economy again. So yeah, I'm paying a little more for gas. I'm not paying as much as I was under Biden. I'm paying a little more for food. I'm not paying as much as I was under Biden. Lots of these things have already gotten better. Wage growth is outpacing inflation. All of these things are in the positive. And I think once you reestablish a blue collar middle class, which 2 generations of Washington politicians just tried to kill and ship all of that to Mexico and China. When you reestablish the ability for normal people to have a future and you don't punish them with taxes on tips and overtime and all these heinous things, and especially our retirees, what were Democrats thinking attaching income tax to Social Security? That's obscene. But Democrats have been doing that for decades. Donald Trump has ended it for the most part and about to come back and get the rest. This is all about American workers, and it's working. And I know you're seeing it. But talk about the business owner benefits too, because there are some real serious reforms in the one big beautiful bill that are coming home to roost right
So
now.
you've got a small, mid-sized business. They need to build a plant. They need to build a building. They need to build something new for manufacturing. They can now expense that entirely. They use bonus depreciation, Section 179, and that's permanent. That's not something that can I do it next year? Can I do it next? How long can I do this for? It's for permanent, and that gives me the ability to manipulate the depreciation numbers to an extremely high degree to maximize the tax benefits and change incomes and do it over multiple years, and let the business owner pay tax at a lower rate, continue to get his qualified business income credit, and just keep reinvesting and keep building. It's a phenomenal piece of legislation for that purpose. There's a few other things we'd like to see in the bill. I think they're coming, and this will turbocharge the second half of the year, I believe. And
Yeah, I absolutely think so. And by the way, this is the Business Pulse brought to you by the Freedom Chamber. So we should talk about the business aspects of some of the things we've been discussing, like Artemis 2. Artemis 2 is based on aged technology. I'm so glad they're going to the moon. I think that's wonderful. But the technology in that rocket was invented in the 70s. I mean, this is ridiculous. These launches are goofy expensive, as much as potentially $4 billion a launch, and you get to use them one time. It's completely expendable. Okay, But the starships you were talking about, Dean, that is a fully reusable system. That's a system that you don't spend 4 billion to launch. That's a system you spend 1 million or 2 million to launch. Elon has said he's targeting more like 700,000. What is the cost? Very minor refurbishment and the fuel. It's all in the fuel, for heaven's sake. So that's just incredible. The difference in those two things, and this is highly investable, folks. There's about to be a SpaceX IPO. SpaceX is a lot more than rockets. It's also that amazing Starlink system that is connecting the whole world. You can get good high-speed internet in the middle of a jungle or at the North Pole. That's Elon. You want to invest in that. But look, if you've got reusable rockets, instead of these expendable rockets we've been using forever, here's the cost differential. It is almost identical. If I buy a plane ticket and fly to Los Angeles versus I build a 737 to fly to Los Angeles and then scrap it on the runway when I arrive. That's the difference. So what this means is you don't get one or two or three rockets. You get thousands of them, and they replace military airlift. They replace intercontinental jet travel. You're flying from New York to London in 23 minutes. You're deploying the entire 3rd Armored Division to Saudi Arabia, not in 6 months like we did it in 1990, but in an hour. And it's just transformative. It will completely change the world. So folks, you need to be paying attention to these technologies. And another one you need to pay attention to is AI. I know you've heard all the hype on AI, but here's what we're starting to see in the numbers. We're seeing that a lot of the companies that thought they were going to cut employees because of AI aren't. And the reason they aren't is because you still need the human element. You need the creativity. You need the direction. You can't just turn the computer loose. No matter how good it is, it still has to have supervision, and somebody has to sign on the dotted line for its work with full legal consequences. So AI is actually creating an enormous opportunity for people to be more productive in the workplace. And we're seeing some estimates right now that suggest that, yeah, it actually will probably kill 70 million jobs. That's actually true. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but it's going to create 170 million. 170 million jobs, 100 million new jobs. It is amazing. And these things are investable too. So you need to pay attention to these things. These things can transform your business. They can transform your future, and they're happening sooner than later. This isn't a generation from now. This is happening now. And even that Mars city you're talking about, Dean, that's going to be in the 2030s. That's not going to be in the 2070s.
Yeah, Rod, and on to your comments about AI. And I know there's a lot of people that are very scared of the AI, but I'll date us both that we remember the 1990s and the internet, and lots of fear about the internet, lots of fear mongering, and it did take a lot of jobs. My two receptionists do the job. It would take 6 of them to do what they do now in 1990. So this made them much more efficient. And I use an AI agent extensively, and it will learn if you use it. I suggest you put it into speech recognition mode and you talk with it. It will learn your voice, it'll learn your mannerisms, it'll learn how you think, how you talk. My wife and I were in Bardstown, Kentucky recently, and coming home that morning, I told it to find us something that would take about 4 hours that we would enjoy. It knew enough to know that we like outdoors, we like history, and we like automotive. It came back with go see Shaker Village. You'll be there at lunch. It has a 5-star lunch menu. Lots of history for you to see. Went all into that. He said, alternatively, since you're an automotive enthusiast, there's the Bowling Green uh, Corvette factory. Both are about a 30-minute detour. You can do one or the other, but you can't do both. It knows me that well. And then, of course, on the business side, it knows, and working on a merger, and it's been a phenomenal tool. But like you said, my attorney still has to go through it because it gave me some bad advice. If I had only taken that, I would have pulled myself into a big hole. So, you got to have the legal resources to go through it. It's a phenomenal tool and it speeds up the conversation. So now my attorneys can be more relational. We're using it extensively in tax planning. What used to take us 2 to 3 weeks, now takes 2 to 3 days, which means now we can be better involved with implementation. And Freedom Chamber members, if you don't have a proactive CPA, if you're only talking to them once or twice a year, you do not have a proactive CPA and you're not getting tax planning done. So if that's you, get online, oncpa.com, connect with my team. The conversation, friendship are always free, and talk about, can you use this one big beautiful bill and the laws that are coming to radically disinherit the government and not your kids. We're seeing it literally. You pay us a quarter, we give you $1. It's no brainer, no science, no, all science. It all works. It's all legal. Um, and yeah, we just did one the other day, saved a guy 6 figures. And that's, yeah, I can't use his name because he's pretty well known, but that's a big number. And he will attest to it. He's out saying it. I can't say it for him, but he's out saying it, telling people that's what we did. Just wrapped his tax return up this morning. So we went through the analysis of what would it have been and what was it and what is it now, and it's literally 6 figures. So the AI is making this much more efficient, which is helping with the labor shortage. There is a massive labor shortage in a lot of these industries and these professions. I know a very good friend of mine, Craig Smith. I'll give a shout out to him. One of the best veterinarians in North America and a very close friend. Um, he's having to use it in his veterinary practice, and it's helping him catch up with new stuff that's coming out, because there is so much new stuff coming out, not only in the human medicine world, but in the dog medicine world. And it's going everywhere. And you got to jump on board. If you don't, you'll be run over. You'll be left behind. I've got my team using it extensively, and they are becoming much more proactive and more relational, because that's what's been hard in the CPA world the last few years. Is there's so few of us, it's hard to be relational. We do too much compliance work. Well, the compliance work's going to AI, and the planning work, the ingenuity, the creativity, the knowing which tax strategies to use, which ones do and which ones don't make sense. That's still going to take a human being, because when the AI comes out, it comes out with every idea possible, and about 2/3 of them don't make sense. So until you understand the person and you understand the situation and the background and context, you can't rely on AI exclusively, but it will make you much more efficient.
Well, it absolutely will. It's probably improved my productivity fivefold, and that's not an exaggeration. And look, in 24 and 25, this was a chat bot. It could do some great research. It could increasingly replace Google. It can do all these things and help you draft some business documents or whatever. That's all changed. In 26, it's all about execution. So, we have really good, reasonably inexpensive, sometimes even free AI agents that will just code you an app. You need an app and you're not happy with what's in the app store, it'll just build it for you. I literally did that last week, and we're pretty happy with the app. I'm going to sell it in the app store because it's actually better than any of its possible competitors right now. It doesn't matter what you need to do. You're effectively buying more staff for a tiny amount of money. Chat GPT plan might be $20 a month. You're going to pay even a reasonably capable intern $20 an hour. So why wouldn't you make use of that? And why wouldn't you spend some time, go on YouTube, learn a little bit about OpenClaw, learn a little bit about Manus, my computer, learn a little bit about the various Claude tools that are coming down the pike. These things are amazing. They'll transform your life. And no, they're not going to destroy a billion jobs. And no, they're not actually going to bring about, universal basic income or universal, massive income like Elon's talking about, unless we let people be stampeded by their fear. Because what this does is it makes everybody better. It's no different than when we got calculators and adding machines and personal computers. And yeah, some jobs went away. I don't have to go down the street to a travel agent anymore. But we're all getting cheaper travel because we have travel tools at our fingertips. And those people aren't in a bread line. They're in better work than they had. So anyway, all of this is what we're looking at. It is a wonderful time to be alive. I do believe the president's going to win this war. I do believe that the moonshot is going to be a glorious beginning of a new era. And I do believe that the very best financial planning and tax practitioner I know is Dean Owen. So, Dean, tell us how we find you.
OwenCPA.com. That's OWENCPA.com. Jump online, connect with my team. We'll have the conversation. Like we said, conversation and friendship is free. We'll look at your situation, see if we can help. If we can, we will. If we don't, we can't. And we'll be honest about it and say so. And again, Rod, where do they find you in that phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal newsletter you put out at rodmartin.org?
Well, again, I'm Rod Martin. I was one of the early guys at PayPal. I'm CEO of Martin Capital, which is a proud member of the Freedom Chamber, as you should be also. And we do daily geopolitical analysis, Fox Business calls, absolutely phenomenal, at rodmartin.org. That's rodmartin.org. We've got tens of thousands of subscribers for our deep analysis. We've got hundreds of thousands of followers on social media. There's a reason. So come see us at rodmartin.org and be sure to get in touch with Dean Owen at owencpa.com. This has been the Business Pulse, brought to you by the Freedom Chamber. We're here every week. We look forward to seeing you next week, and go make some money.
Healthcare costs are crushing America's small businesses. Premiums have risen over 240% in the last decade, forcing companies to choose between growth and healthcare coverage. The Freedom Chamber, found online at freedomchamber.net, has a better solution: the Guardianship Healthcare Plan. Designed by a doctor who understands that strong care starts with a strong doctor-patient relationship. This plan puts people first while protecting your bottom line. With up to 45% annual premium savings, the Guardianship Plan delivers real care, real savings, and real freedom. Your business, your employees, your health plan needs the Guardianship. The Freedom Chamber Guardianship Plan. Get your quote today. Learn how your business can take control of healthcare. Visit freedomchamber.net, the pro-American business network.